Hey everyone, welcome to the KE Report and a company update on October 31st, Halloween. Happy Halloween, everybody. We're getting an update from Banyan Gold, chatting with the president and CEO, Tara Christie. We're going to be recapping some recent news out of the company back on October 29th, talking about a silver discovery made initially back in 2021 at the AurMac Project in the Yukon, and now some follow-up drilling this year where the company was sharing some of the visual results and in a way reintroducing us to the discovery that was made back in 2021. The headline number of over 1,800 grams per ton silver, over almost 17 meters from the Powerline deposit. Looks like it's in a way right in the middle of the deposit. Again, these were results from 2021 and that news release highlighting most of the drilling from back in 2021, but then also saying the company is in a way confirming these results with current drilling. Tara, take us back to 2021, these drill results at this Powerline deposit, please.
Thanks, Corey. It is really exciting to see high-grade silver. And back in 2021, silver wasn't all that exciting. And a couple of the other thing that really changed is not only the silver price, but our interpretation of what these hits meant. Previously we kind of hadn't really figured out the orientation of them. But now that we've looked at it again, and I have a new geological team, we really see that they line up. And we believe there's a structural trend through there that we can follow. And so that's partly why we thought, let's remind people about this, because back in 2021, it was like, that's nice, but it confuses the story. People will wonder how we process it, and we can talk about that in a bit, and how it fits with the gold, etc. But now, looking at it and seeing that it's a discrete vein that cross cuts the power line, if it is, and if we can find anywhere with significant widths, it's a pretty important economic contributor for us. Not to mention that there's a mill that processes this ore less than a 10-minute drive down the road right at Hecla's high-grade Keno Hill silver project. So we thought it was a great time, and given our geological model allowed us to project it, and we hit it in that hole 803 that we've showed the core of right on trend where we expected it. We thought we should remind people, hey, remember these holes that we hit? And we've been showing the core at lots of different geological symposiums over the last few years. But if they fit together in a story, it's a bit of a game changer for us.
So, Tara, do you need to go back through any of the past drilling, which you've done a lot of drilling on this asset, and re-assay for silver?
No, this is a distinct style of mineralization, and these were good assays in 2021. We don't need to re-assay them. They had all the QA, QC, the proper over limit analysis, etc. It's just that in that time period with the silver price, nobody really cared. And we hadn't put together a model to show that these holes all linked together. We actually had a bit of a different structural orientation. We can now kind of see these line up with that Birmingham deposit that's at Keno on a structural trend. So, you know, the rest of the deposit has minute amount of silver and not enough to be economically, and it's different than this silver, which is a concentration. When you get 14,000 grams per ton over 1.1 meter or 11,800 grams per ton over 1.2 meters, that is very different. It is quite unique. If you look at the photographs that are in our news release, you can see that it is distinctly different than the Powerline mineralization through which it crosscuts. And if you look at the section which we provided, you can see our visualization of how this cuts it. So, as if there's a knife that came in and cut it and separated it. And then, it's kind of like the peanut butter between two pieces of bread that go across the deposit. That makes it not within the actual Powerline stratigraphy, it crosscuts.
Explain to us figure two then, because this is where we see the gold resource and now this right in the middle of the map, silver shoot. Clearly what you have drilled and some of the holes we see from 2021, 2024, and now this hole 803 from this year's drilling. How much more are you going to test this? Are there other holes that are in and around here? And again, just explain how it's even possible to have all this gold resource and mineralization and then just this one silver shoot.
Well, it's pretty interesting, and let's go back to the geological history briefly, and not in like huge geological terminology detail. But this gold was in place roughly 100 million years ago. So, it in the Powerline deposit, there was a structural trend that laid these sheeted veins down where the gold-bearing fluid came in, and they're roughly 15 degrees dipping to the northwest, so almost flat lying within the stratigraphy. Then, 20 million years later, when the mineralizing event was occurring, which created all the mineralization at Keno Hill, this vein there's likely some kind of an event which cracked the rocks in this direction, and then this molten rock carrying the silver came in and was emplaced in this chute between, the power line deposits. So it's not like they were occurring at the same time and they've been mixed in a big pot. They're quite distinct and they're different time periods. So, geological history is a long time period, and that's a really rough version of it. But you can kind of visualize that, to have some tectonic event that creates that crack, and then along comes this silver bearing fluid, which then, solidifies through that. And the fact that it's so close to surface, that's pretty interesting as well. Within our stratigraphic section, it's generally was thought that any silver mineralization would be much deeper, or we would have been out of that portion of the geology. So pretty interesting that we're seeing it actually cross-cut our older gold mineralization.
Let's talk potential resource implications then, because as long as I followed along, we all know that you have a very large gold resource, 7.7 million ounces, and I believe that current resource is all gold. So, could there be enough silver here to move the needle, add to the overall ounces, or do we need to look at this silver as something totally different outside of the gold resource, even though it's right in the middle of that power line deposit?
Well, it is different, so it probably wouldn't have the same milling. And, we do have information from the metallurgy of Keno Hill. We can't assume it's exactly the same, but it might be similar. And we know what type of processing technique works for them. We also know that historically, when people found this very high grade ore, they would actually ship it off to the mill directly, or to mills or elsewhere. We do have that mill down the road, which has some capacity for extra feed. If we find enough for it to be that, you can do toll milling type situations. If it's high concentrate enough, you ship it off. And remember, Alexco ships it off, or Alexco, now Hecla, they concentrate their ore, but they ship it off in these pods on trucks to be processed elsewhere. It's not fully processed right at site. So, there's lots of optionality with this. It adds a new dimension, and it also brings in companies that have, existing mills or existing facilities to process this ore into the mix, because many of those companies have multiple mines. They have both gold and silver mines. So, this adds a component for somebody that has that infrastructure to process this type of ore. We have the optionality, if we could find enough of it, that these very high grades, yeah, we could mine it and ship it off. It wouldn't be the same mill that processes the gold ore that we're kind of looking at as the main option for processing both Powerline and airstrip ore.
So taking that one step further, realize that it's still early stage for this, but does that mean that it simply opens up other funding opportunities like offtake agreements and such?
Absolutely. That's the key thing. Optionality and very high grade ore is always something that can add a lot of value to a company.
So Tara, what do you do with this then? Because you already have ongoing a large drill program, over 40,000 meters that are going to be drilled this year, focused on gold. Everyone's focused on the gold resource here, but now we're in the silver bull market and you're hitting this very high grade silver, at least back in 2021. We'll see what this whole 803 comes back. Does this change your strategy at all?
Well, you can see, Corey, we're drilling off the northeast section of Powerline here, and this area doesn't have much drilling. So, we are we're continuing to add ounces at Powerline with our drilling, and consequently, we're making very minor adjustments to our drill plan to be able to also target silver. So it's kind of a two for one thing. We're adding ounces, we're drilling key areas of Powerline that we're going to drill anyway, and with not very much extra cost or effort, we're also able to target the silver. So, that makes it really economical. We know we're drilling areas that we want to drill anyway.
All right, well, Tara, this news, in all fairness, kind of came out of the blue, especially for me, and as closely as I followed along with this story. Give us a lay of the land of future news to come. And you probably can't share any other kind of random news that might be coming, but what should we be expecting here?
Yes, this was random news month or week, but then we'll get back to our regular programming, which is lots more airstrip drilling. 50% of our drill holes have been into airstrip, more power line drilling. We've been stepping out, and you can see from the new drill maps in our presentations that, we've been going north and northeast and southwest on power line and airstrip both directions pretty aggressively, and some big step outs. So we'll have results of all of that to come. We've been really focused on these high grade areas at airstrip, following that dike, that contact with the metasediments and tracing it east west across the property, and power line, following up on these high grade areas, because we think that demonstrating this core of high grade and targeting that 5 million ounces of 1 gram is where the real value is. The extra, the Highland resource is a great, nice add-on of some extra ounces. This silver story, if we can find somewhere where this crack, where this silver mineralization is in place, has really widened out and there's a significant volume, that's what's really going to make the silver story exciting. And that's why we want to start talking about it. And it's also, putting out this news release has brought us a few people that are experts in Keno Hill geology that kind of have said, wow, this is exciting. Can I come take a look? And that helps our geology team and helps us be more successful. So look forward to lots of news flow, Corey. We're still drilling with 4 drills today, and that means that we're generating more news flow for into 2026.
All right, Tara. Thank you very much for the update again, Tara Christie, President and CEO of Banyan Gold. You all can click the link in the show notes to read over that recent news release, check out figure 2 that we referred to, and please continue sending me any questions you have for Tara. Tara, again, thanks for your time. Happy Halloween. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Corey.